Hello?
Hey, Frank.
Hello, Bill.
Hey, you got in early.
Well, 5 minutes, you know.
Right.
It's the way it's in Catholic Church. Everybody arrives in the last 5 minutes. You know?
Right. Yeah, it's not like we have limited seating in this. So how are things going with you?
Well, not too bad. You know, it's winter. You know, I'm not really a winter person. So, you know.
Now, where do you live?
I live in Vicksburg, Michigan, which is just about, it's really what it is. It's like Kalamazoo, but just about 8 miles south of I-94.
Oh, okay. Now, I thought you were connected with the Lansing Diocese at one point.
No, never
okay.
was. I was one of the mighty three that graduated from St. Joe that one year.
Right.
And I was the last one to leave the class.
Oh.
Well, you know, even your class, what you had
yeah.
70 plus and you only had 2 of them make it through, you know.
Right. I mentioned this once before. I'd like to get a copy of that annual bulletin that was put out sometime in April or May of each year that showed all the people who were in the 6 different classes. I don't remember many of the people who were either in my class that started in 1960, and I only recognize you, Larry Christensen, and who was the other one?
Yeah, Dick Galant.
Right, but I don't recall any of your classmates. I probably would recognize them if I saw them in writing or somebody mentioned some of them. And the further up the food chain, the fewer people that I can recall, and the only written record was that annual bulletin. So I'd like to get my hands on some of those.
I don't have them. It's interesting though. Last year, you know, I got an email from Charlie Blanchard, who was in our class.
I remember. Yeah, remember.
You know, and I read it and I got a hold of him. I camp up in his area, you know, and he and I met for breakfast one day, and then we talked for a long time, and then we had lunch, and we didn't break off till like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we just spent about 5-6 hours just chewing the fat. We hadn't seen each other in like 52 years, we figured.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Same with our class. I know last fall, several folks tried to get together. Frank Marfia and Al Wahmhoff sort of hosted a little group over there on the west side of the state. And I see Pete has joined the crowd.
Amazing.
I remember this last year with Pete, you know, I remember when I said that, you know, I left in the 8th year without really understanding why, in a way, you know, and somebody said, well, geez, you know, and then Pete come back and says, well, you know, I'll have to join Frank on that one. You know, I remember that. That was interesting.
Yeah. And speaking of
names popping up in here.
Yep, there's Dick Galant and Norb Bufka signing in, and there's Dick.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Frank Marfia coming in. And we got the mystery person who's connecting to audio. That's probably Mike Murphy, I'll bet you.
That's what it says.
It is.
All right, it's good to see some familiar faces.
Frank.
Hi, Pete. Loved your question.
Oh,
I loved your questions, Pete.
Oh, good. Do you have any snow in Chicago?
The first one is the one I hope we address. The way you worded it, why are people leaving the church?
Yeah,
meeting.
and I see Norb is now joined us officially and has turned on his microphone.
Yeah, can you see me?
Yeah, we can see you. We can hear
Okay,
you.
great. Hi,
Can you
everybody.
see us?
Hey, Albert.
Hi.
I would suggest that people, once we get the full room up, that we identify ourselves, especially when speaking in response to questions that are comments that Norb might have because of his vision problem. He has a problem actually seeing who is speaking. So let's kind of keep that in mind. And
Thank
I
you,
see
Bill.
Tom Dalton, our photographer in residence, has joined the crowd.
Oh. Who is that? Tom Dalton?
Tom Dalton is,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, okay. He was our attended from 59 to 60, as I recall, and lives right near the seminary. So he's been able to get over there and take a lot of photos over the last year and a half as things changed.
Right.
And Paul Banner is online.
Mm-hmm.
Is Paul
Stash
listening to, is
Hello.
Paul
Hello.
listening to music?
Now I can.
What do I do?
Stash and his helper are online.
There you
All
go.
right.
Okay.
And Bill Gebhardt has joined us. So that gives us 12 so far, which is pretty good.
Bill from Florida?
Yes, it's Florida for me.
I could say the same thing, but there's a foot of snow out there.
Is Paul listening to music with those headphones?
No, I'm listening to you.
I haven't figured out because one thing with Zoom, and that is how I can put my earphones in without cutting out my microphone. So
You probably can't.
yeah, it's every time. I think when I tried to do that, I ended up shutting off my microphone and had to get some online help from the Geek Squad to get it back in. So I don't want to tamper with any settings. And there's Jim Blanchard.
Hi, Bill.
Hey, good to see you. I remember Jim from North Muskegon. Is my memory correct in that?
Close, Norton Shores.
Norton Shores. Okay, well, Norton Shores, North Muskegon.
Close.
Well, actually, quite a ways apart, really.
Right. I thought in our discussion somewhere that there was somebody who lived in North Muskegon, and the funny thing is, with all the several parishes in Muskegon itself, North Muskegon, just across the lake, apparently there was a parish over there, but for the life of me, I never heard anything from anybody over there.
Do you recall which parish that was, Bill?
I thought it had the name like St. Mary's or something like that. I know there was a St. Mary's in downtown Muskegon, but
Well, I think there's a Prince of Peace in North Muskegon.
oh, okay.
It's built, I think, only about 25 years ago. It's relatively new, so
Oh, okay.
most likely it's not attached with any of us or anybody who went there then.
Right. One thing I remember about the parishes in Muskegon, they were all located very close to one another, but they were appealing to, I mean, their origins were very ethnic in nature. Now, the the German parish, St. Joe's, is where I went. And a few blocks away was the French parish, St. Jean's.
Mhm.
And a couple of blocks away from that was the Irish parish, St. Mary's.
Huh.
And then off in the hinterlands was St. Michael's, which was the Polish parish. So it was kind of an interesting ethnic grouping. You sort of went where your ethnic group was sort of identified. The Italian community, after a while, they established a parish.
Is that Sacred Heart?
No, it wasn't Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart, I can't remember if it had any specific ethnic group identified with it. I know that the Gorbinskis went there. Our Lady of Grace, that was the one that the Italians in the 50s sort of identified with.
It was off on Getty Street.
Right. And I don't even know if some of those parishes are still around anymore. The
I
only
think
ones
they've done a lot of consolidation, Bill.
Right.
'Cause a single pastor is the pastor for two parishes.
Right. And I know that St. Jean's itself closed and the property was sold off to another faith group. And I don't know what the status of St. Mike's is.
St. Mike's and St. Francis have consolidated.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I remember when St. Francis had a really small church and had Sunday services in the gym, I think, before they established that really big one across the street. So, and I remember Father Leo was the pastor there for some time in the 1970s, but that's about. I don't live there anymore, but my brother and my sister both live there, so I rely on them for some reminiscences about the parishes there. And got another. Hi.
Hello.
Do you pronounce your name
Terry?
Terry?
Terry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry I'm late.
Right. No, we're still just getting the last few people logged on. Chris Shea is coming aboard, so he will be. His picture will show up shortly.
Bill?
Yeah.
And speaking about Muskegon, I want to come from a viewpoint of Grand Rapids, especially the west side of the city was basically set up the same way as Muskegon. But throughout the city, it was identified with of ethnic groups pretty much. My point is the same setup, especially on the west side where the churches were pretty close to each other.
Yeah, that's very true. In many places, Bay City was the same way. There were many ethnic parishes. I went to an ethnic parish out in the country in Luna.
What was that ethnic group?
Bohemian.
Bohemian?
Bohemian.
Oh, okay.
We say Czech. It'd be Czech today. Yeah, not Bohemian, the ones that run around like gypsies.
Well, one of my memories of St. Joseph's Parish was the pastor there, Father Stratz, who actually graduated from St. Joe's Seminary in class of 1912, if you can believe that. This picture was one of those that was just outside the library on the second floor when they had the gallery of classes out there. And when I did a search of his bio or his history, it turns out for the major seminary, he went to Montreal. And then from there, he went to Salzburg and studied in Austria for the major seminary. And that was in the 30s when the real wingers were taken over. So it was really kind of interesting to see somebody who had some roots in there. And actually, it turns out that a lot of, or several refugees from Germany following World War II came to St. Joe's in Muskegon. And I think the pastor was sort of their sponsor or whatever. I recall some of them underwent a name change. The Freitag family became the Fridays. And he was named Joe Friday, ironically. So that was kind of an interesting. I have a suspicion that there were quite a few others who underwent a similar name change, and probably nobody really wanted to talk about what they were doing in the 40s. So, well, anyway, let's get our session underway. I wanted to start with a note and some photos that I received from Monsignor Terry Stewart. I'm not going to. I was going to try and show the photos that he sent tonight, but then it was getting to be too complicated. I asked him early on about when Bishop Rose was going to celebrate his next birthday. And Terry said he's going to be 92 on February 28th. And he's now in Emmanuel Hospice as his condition is slowly deteriorating. He still knows me and has a number of visitors and seems to be glad to see people, but he might not know exactly who they are. He wrote that the hospice workers add an extra level of care for him in addition to that provided at St. Anne's. He continues his medications. Being in hospice does not necessarily mean death is imminent. It makes care for him a little more intensive. He continues to be his gentle self, although on many visits he was sleeping so deeply that it's very difficult to wake him up. Let us keep Bishop Rose in our prayers. A couple of other things before we launch into the two main topics of the day. You may have noticed that with the updates that I started using MailChimp. It allows, it's a little easier to do some of the graphics and the publishing than trying to do it the way I had been doing it for a while. But I don't know if any of our alumni actually use MailChimp and would be willing to help out with some of the production and especially the proofreading. I seem to have a miserable time in getting the years straight. When I'm always getting 2020, 2021, and 2022 mixed up. So I rely on my wife to kind of do some of the proofreading and see some of the sentences actually make sense and whether I got the right dates and stuff like that in there. But so if anybody is willing to help out with that, I would really appreciate an extra set of eyes. And I wanted to especially thank Tom Dalton for his excellent photography work, kind of chronicling the changes that have been taking place over the last couple of years on the grounds. And I had an idea the other day when I saw some drone footage of places that I have and lived in Detroit. And I thought, my gosh, it would be really kind of cool if we could get some drone shots of the grounds of the seminary, including some of the buildings that still exist and area that is going to be the site of those new family homes. So I guess I was kind of asking in general whether anybody has access to or skill in using drones. It would really be cool if we could add that while we still can. So would really be great in hearing from people on that if they can help out or know somebody who can take some flyovers of the seminary. It's one of those things that I personally would love to be able to do. I just have never got around to taking that next big jump. So, okay, we had two general, well, oh, I know, I just wanted to kind of, before we begin our discussion of the Synod plan and Sententiae, I just want to kind of throw the door open to real quick announcements of the state of things with each of you, and then we can kind of go into our more in-depth discussion. So I got a message from Frank Marfia that he had some information that he wanted to share, and then we'll kind of throw it open to see if anybody else has any information on to share with the group. Frank?
Thank you, Bill. I actually wanted to start off with thanking everybody who was on the last call. I was probably the big instigator of the discussion about the things that happened at the end of 1966, April and May of 66. This was a seminal period for me. It really probably started the ball rolling on me leaving the seminary in a couple of years after that. I lost a lot of trust with the clergy of at least the seminary clergy, and then even later on of the higher clergy the next couple of years in the seminary. So that I thank everybody for that session we had last call. And I also want to especially thank Paul Banner. Paul, you played a really huge role in the events that May. Some of us, we kind of used you. We deliberately, on our second meeting with Monsignor Moran, we decided that we would try to find somebody who would be, I don't know, humble, smart, could be direct to Monsignor Moran to tell him to please be quiet and just listen to our concerns. And you did a great job on that. And then I didn't realize all the other roles you played. You played in a big role in finding the seminary, the next level of assignments. So I wanted to thank Paul wholeheartedly for his efforts at that period of time. But what I also want to tell you is some somewhat unsettling news about myself. I don't know if you can tell, I'm thinner than I was probably a year ago. I've lost a lot of weight, 35 pounds. And I've just been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease. It's really hard to spell it out. I'll see if you can see this. You probably can't. It's myositis anti-synthetase syndrome interstitial lung disease.
Oh,
It's an autoimmune disease that has no cure, and but it can go into remission. So if you think of lupus or even other diseases that people live with, this is something I'm probably going to have to live with for the rest of my life. I've just started some really heavy medication, prednisone, and something else to suppress my white blood cells. Their white blood cells right now are, I might have this wrong, but I believe the way it was described is they're attacking my lungs. And they must think I have something wrong with my lungs, that it's a foreign body. So my breathing is not as good as it should be, and I'm very short of breath. And I had this disease when we were meeting in St. Joe, Michigan for lunch. I had early stages of it. I didn't know that, of course. And it's not contagious. None of you are going to get this disease, I hope. So I'm asking a little bit for your prayer, but I'm getting into an upbeat situation where I'm starting these drugs, heavy duty drugs, and it looks like it's too early probably to tell, but I can probably live quite a long life taking this medication and being very careful. So thank you for your time. That's all I had to say.
May I follow up
quickly?
quickly?
And you're You're a battler, I know that. Battle vet.
Yeah, I will. I
Battle
try
with-
to. I've been depressed a while, but lately I've been getting into a more upbeat situation. I have really good doctors. I've had a lot of tests. I just had an echocardiogram and my heart is in really good shape. And the CT scan, I'm going to get a second one soon. I'm getting something called a pulmonary function test. It's a way of determining if my breathing is getting any better. My lungs capacity is improving. So it's not a death sentence. I'm not trying to tell you that I'm on my death door. It's just that I'm probably going to be spending the next 5+ years on medication, and hopefully it'll go into remission. Now, my sister has been on lupus for 35 years. She got lupus when she was 30. She's just turning 65. So I guess you can survive these autoimmune diseases if you pay attention and follow your doctors. That's it. I don't want to dwell on this because let's get to the topics in question. Unless you guys
Can I follow up on your earlier comments about the St. Joe incident?
Yeah, sure.
I was not a part of your group, and so I don't know all of the history, but I'm kind of curious from hearing some of the commentary. Could you go into a little more detail?
Sure.
what started this?
That January, we had to, all of us at St. Joe's had to take a Minnesota multiphasic personality test, I think it's called. It was a 5-hour test. And it was explained to us that if we tried to lie, give wrong answers, they would know, the testers would know that we were giving data that was incorrect. And the way it was explained to us, it was to help us, I don't know, improve our mental health. The results were supposed to be shared only with our spiritual advisor, Monsignor Moran, and ourselves. I never saw a copy of my results, never. And then we learned, I'm not sure which priest might have told us, that all the results were shared at a staff meeting, a priestly staff meeting. And we had heard, now this is a rumor, I don't know this to be true, that a few students were being asked to leave the seminary based on the results. As I say, I don't know for a fact that that's true. But anyway, a group of us, I was not the spokesperson, I was a little quiet person in the corner, met twice with Monsignor Moran. The first time he pretty much pushed us aside, said we were barking up the wrong tree, this is not an issue. And we met again, we invited him back for a second. We stopped attending classes, and not everybody. So that's why apparently some people, this was not a big issue back in.
And what were you, in second year college then?
I was in second year college.
Okay.
So I was on the cusp of moving on to another seminary after the end of May, early June. So we met a second time. We asked or pleaded or begged or pushed Paul Banner to be our second spokesman. He did a wonderful job. I was always proud of you, Paul, on that effort you did with Monsignor Moran.
Well, I didn't know the background.
You were pleasant, but we asked you to tell him to be quiet. We didn't want him to talk. We wanted us to talk. And so you did. You followed that advice. And nothing ever, in my mind, happened from that second meeting with Moran. The year just petered out, just ended. And I realized when I read that story there was a story published in the Kansas City paper. What's the name of that paper?
It was National Catholic
National
Reporter.
Catholic Reporter about our incident in St. Joe's. And the story said that some of our parents were getting active and were trying to meet with Monsignor Moran and others to defuse the situation. So that was the first I'd heard that. I didn't have a very active, my mother had just died and my father was not involved in those kind of things. So that little story in the newspaper was the first I heard of it. And then about a week later, the year ended. So nothing really happened, in my mind. It just petered out, the whole brouhaha. But it left a bad taste in my mouth. It was a big decision that I thought the priest, Monsignor Moran, dropped the ball on this. But then I later learned that Paul, he got the results of his psychological test, right, Paul? You actually saw your results.
And I got that much earlier. Thinking back, I don't remember when we took the test. thinking backwards, it seems to me like it must have been a year and a half earlier than that. Just my scope of reference.
My remembrance is that it was like January, because I talked to Jim Hammock. He had left the seminary in December and he had not taken it. So my thinking is it might have been is like midwinter or early winter.
Well, going in a little deeper, that at whatever point Monsignor Moran had me come into his office, and I didn't get the results of the test as far as raw data or any of that stuff goes. What he presented to me was Dr. Krine's analysis of the test, the results of what kind of, I don't want to say the psychological profile because I don't think that's the right inference, but that he describes some stuff that that I really hadn't recognized, and he really hit the nail on the head. And he recommended that that I do some psychological counseling with him, which we did do. And I would say I met with him maybe 4 times over the course of the rest of that year. And then the following year, I met with him twice. And after the second meeting with him, he said, well, I want you to take a year off and get out of the seminary, get off on your own. And at that point, I was living at the seminary, working at Darling Freight, working in their trailer shop. Jim Lozier was, I think it was Jim Lozier was also working there. He may have had a year's seniority on me down there. And as I've said to this group, when I walked out of the doors of the seminary to join the gang that was living in the house down in the ghetto, I knew that I was not going back. This great weight was lifted off my shoulders, out of my chest. I really felt very freed. And I had people who helped me through that in the fashion that they were accepting of me, just like I think most of us, and maybe I'm a little more selfish than some people, that in our seminary experience, I think most of us were very accepting of one another with whatever foibles we had. That's enough of that for.
So I guess the test, it looks like it was a positive for some people. I mean, it was just neutral for me. I never saw the results. And the big thing that upset me was when we discovered that, at least it appeared that Monsignor Moran had lied to us about how all the results would be shared.
This is Shea. It was one of those who was for whom it was suggested and having some difficulties. Anyway, suggested that and I didn't really think too much of it. It wasn't in my class. And I don't have too much effect on me as a state, but I do think it's indicative of indicative of the kind of in which we in seminary structure that
Can I interrupt for just a minute there? I don't know whether it's Chris or somebody else. We're getting a lot of feedback from somebody's having a speaker on, or mic on.
Chris is on twice.
Yeah.
Chris, you're showing up twice on the screen. You've got to turn off, Chris, you're going to have to turn off one of the feeds that you've got going.
It may be that one is your cell phone and then you're on a
Computer.
device that you have video and audio.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, you did it.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yep.
They're hearing the dog over the marking.
Let the dog out.
Yeah, that was my dog. I'm sorry. We were hearing squeaks and everything, and he started barking.
Any other items to share before we get into our two big ones?
Just one minor final point. If we do have another gathering, luncheon, a reunion down the road, I want to come. I'm not contagious. This disease, I cannot give it to anybody. As long as I'm taking my meds and if my health improves, which I'm very hopeful that it will, I certainly want to continue not only these Zoom calls, but any kind of, these have been a really positive for me. I've enjoyed reconnecting with all of you. Does anybody heard about Bill Hammond or Jim Hammond? Didn't we hear recently that he had some kind of cancer?
He had prostate cancer. And I think the way he described it, he was getting the radioactive pellets.
Okay, I mean, we're getting to an age where, I'm sorry to say this, a few of us are going to probably pass on. But we don't want to dwell on that, right? We're going to dwell on the positives. And this has been a great opportunity for me to connect with you. Albert, I love the time I visited you and your wife in your home in New Buffalo. Yeah, I had a great day. It was one of the best days in the last year of connecting with you and your wife.
Thank you very much.
Could I make a comment regarding this? It may seem a little off, but I remember the last meeting. I can't remember, was it Jim Blanchard, I believe, was the last person to present. And he spoke about, whoever it was, spoke about Monsignor Moran. And he was talking, he saw him kind of just before he passed. If you recall that, and one of the things he brought out, whoever it was, indicated that Monsignor Moran made a comment about us in the sense of that they were very good and competent people. And what always hit me as the seminary declined and we came into the 80s, I guess, or whatever, is I could never figure out with the priest shortage why dioceses didn't go back to the seminary and try to recruit some of the people to be deacons. And it made no sense to me because they knew what the preparation we had and the dedication and the time and everything we put in. And I I have no clue. What struck me was he fighting with the bishop over the fact that maybe they discussed that and for some reason the bishop would quell it? Because perhaps he saw how, he kind of was the harbinger, or he took the hit with the whole decline. I mean, the fact that the seminary basically closed down and split up. And, the ramifications of that, did he, just kind of fueled him in a good and bad way. He was trying to defend us, is what I'm trying to say. And the logic of that never made sense before, in my mind, of why they didn't recruit us. And the only other thing that I can say, and it seems kind of negative in a way, but the time that each of us, and you can think about it, spent in our formative years, if you will, just of becoming aging and all that, of growing in anyways, that the seminary, even if we left, they never said thank you. Never one person said thank you. And what is amazing to me is that that's what they preached. It was like a non sequitur. And why not? I mean, whether you didn't do the full course, that's fine. But why never say thank you for your time and what you did? That's just what I wanted to share. But it just it's something that I came out with, and I came up with at the end, and I thank Frank for sharing what he has, and just kind of just bringing closure from my end on what's happened. So take it for what it's worth.
Could I pause for just a second here? We had somebody join us who just in the last couple of minutes, and all it says is Richard's iPad. Could you tell us?
Gietzen.
Pardon?
It's Rick Gietzen. I'm sorry I'm late. I was visiting my granddaughter 2 doors over, and then I realized, it's the 7th, and it's past 7. Sorry about the late coming.
Okay, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Bill, if I can follow up on Dick's comments, I did have that conversation with Monsignor Moore, and he took a lot of pride in all of the students, regardless of how long you were in or how you did. He took a lot of personal pride in all of us, and he did present that comment to the bishop that they should take former students for permanent or permanent diaconate program. And he never said much beyond that. So I don't know if the bishop kind of shot the idea down, but in any event, it never gained any traction. But he felt strongly about the training that we all received at St. Joe's, and he thought that we were more than qualified to serve in that capacity.
Anybody else have any comments to add before we head into our 2 main topics of discussion? All right, well, why don't we jump into the discussion about the plans for the Synod listening session. I think everybody who got the last issue of the update saw some of Pete's concerns and questions and a response from Norb. So I'll turn it, I guess, start with Pete.
I'd like to go first.
Oh, okay, fine.
If you're wondering, are you ready?
Yeah.
That was my vote.
Am I on?
Yep.
Yes,
you're on.
Yeah, okay. I want to back up a little bit because to put some of this in perspective, I think Pope Francis is making a radical change in church leadership. And as we all well know, it takes a long time to make changes in such a huge organization, especially one that has a history of monarchical rule for over 1,000 years. So he has tried to do various things. And I bring that up because a couple years ago, well, maybe it's more than two, before one of the synods, he asked for input from the people through the bishops. Well, most bishops ignored him, or they found their favorite priest or people and got some things together and reported
the other door, just a second.
Reported it to the Vatican and didn't bother telling the people or anything. And so this is a step forward. The reason I bring that up is because
At the other door.
Pope Francis is learning, the Vatican, I hope, is learning that to get input from people, you have to be a little more specific, direct, and engage the people and the bishops sooner. And he's doing all that. I see that as a positive thing. And as I said at the last meeting, when he asked for input, I guess I shouldn't say I said it because I'm not sure what I said at the last meeting, but he's asking for input in regard to synodality, which unfortunately confuses most people, including me, because it's not a word we use very often. And so I learned a phrase that helps me understand what that is.
Yeah.
Synodality means
Okay, thanks.
journeying together as equals. Now, most of us have not experienced that in our church life, I'm sure, journeying together as equals. But Pope Francis says that synodality was the way the church operated for the first 300 years. And I like to say it's democracy, but that has such overtones politically that that's a dangerous word to even use. But in the early church, some of you probably remember the story of Ambrose. Ambrose was elected bishop of I don't remember the city. He wasn't even a priest, but the people elected him their bishop. And so he became their bishop. And so that's synodality, and as the way I look at it, journeying together as equals. So what Pope Francis is asking for in this input and the handbook is for us to give examples of good and bad journeying together. And in the case of bad things that were happening, and in other words, how were you hurt by all this, by the church? Let's leave the word synodality out. How did you benefit from the church? How were you hurt by the church? And if you were hurt by the church, do you have suggestions that could prevent that or stop that in the future? What things can we change to offset that in the future? So that's my background. Then Pete, and in my mind, when I proposed it last week, and this is a personality quirk of me, okay, I had in mind the whole process that we would go through. And then Pete came up with these comments after reading the handbook, and I really appreciated that, Pete. Pete's here, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I really appreciated those comments because what you said to me, you're engaged. Now, it sounded like you disagreed with the whole process, but I'm trying to put it in a little different frame of mind. And I think we can give the comments the kind of feedback that you were talking about. I think the document calls for that, even though it was clearly not spelled out the way you did. And so there, as I see it, well, one more thing. It's designed to go through the bishops. The bishops are responsible for holding the listening sessions and then writing a report that gets sent to the USCCB, and the USCCB meets with Mexico and Canada, and they write up a report, and that's what gets sent to the Vatican. But the document also says that groups and individuals can send information directly to the Vatican. And when I read that, I got excited because this is one group, and I've proposed this to other groups. Okay, you're not the only one. We're a kind of unique group, and whether you're still involved in the church or not, we all went to St. Joe's, And so we have a common background, and I think that demographic should be put in the report. And so that, since we're not operating through the diocese, there's 3 steps involved. First is setting a date, which we already did, but preparing the question. And I didn't bring that up last time. Or if I did it in passing, or it was my question. But this group, you can write what the question is, or I say 1, it could be 3 or 4. I just participated in 2 sessions with Voice of the Faithful, and both of them, there were two basic questions. And there were only 6 people involved, and we took 2 hours. But, okay, so step 1 is preparing the questions. Step 2 is the actual listening session. And it's very important to keep this in mind, that during the listening session, that's exactly what it is. We listen to each other. We hear what each other has to say, and we put together from that then a report. And that's our responsibility too, since we're not going through the bishops. And so as I see it, there's like I already said, come up with the questions. Secondly, somebody moderating the listening session, and somebody else writing a report. And what doesn't have to be somebody else, but I would hope that it wouldn't be all the same people, several people. And the report, I think, should go back to the participants for their approval. By approval, I don't mean that they agree with everything that was said, but agree that those things were said, because they want to hear from everybody. And I suspect in this group, we're not all going to agree on everything that's going to be said in those listening sessions. So that's pretty much where I'm at. I'm totally open to all kinds of possibilities. If I gave you the impression that I had it all worked out and this is the way we're going to do it, I apologize for that. That's kind of the way I operate though. But as soon as I get involved with other people like Pete did, I suddenly feel like I'm on a team that's working together for this. And so whoever, whatever you have to say, it is valuable and should be used to work out the way we're going to do this in March. The 2 sessions, just to remind everybody, Monday, March 14th at 7 p.m. and Wednesday, March 16th at 4 p.m. I suggested that to give people 2 different times, but if there aren't very many people participating and we can all go to 1, that would be a good idea too. So with that, I guess I'll open it up to questions, comments, and see where we can go from here.
Norb, I'm curious what the 2 questions were with your session with Voice of the Faithful.
I knew you'd ask that, but I didn't memorize it. But one of them had to do with the Universal Church, and I know another one was particular. What kinds of things are going on in your parish that you approve of or support or that's helpful, and what's not. They were more, but they certainly opened the door to all kinds of comments on both ways.
I'm curious also, do you have any idea what you think our group what kind of questions we would focus on that would be different from the questions like from my parish that they gave us?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. My first thought is we all went to St. Joe's, so we have a common experience. And I think that our experience from that would be helpful to the Vatican. Because right now, the training of priests is in a horrible state of affairs in some seminaries, as far as I'm concerned. Some of the young priests that are coming out would sound like they came out of St. Joe's back in the 50s. I don't know if your experience is that, but that's been mine. Now, that's my personal bias, okay? I think that's the wrong direction.
So we would offer suggestions on how priests should be trained these days?
We could, sure. Sure. I mean, based on your experience. I mean, how did your experience, just briefly, for example, I've thought about this because that's part of what I'm trying to share. St. Joe's, on the plus side, was a tremendous benefit for me because I came from a small farm in a little knob county, and I doubt I would ever have gone to college if I had not gone to seminary. Now, that has nothing to do with being a priest, of course, but that was a benefit to me. Now, for years, I had terrible feelings and memories about St. Joe's. I couldn't pinpoint them. I didn't know for sure what the heck it was all about. And I was at a class reunion one year, and Jim Swiat, father, who was a priest, presided at Mass and spoke about the abusive nature of the seminary, emotional and otherwise. And I was much relaxed after that, it wasn't just me. Now, in contrast to that, another classmate of mine, the discipline. I learned how to follow rules. I was great at that. When I left the seminary, I thought, now what do I do? I can do anything. It didn't train me for life. It trained me how to follow rules. But once I left the seminary, I didn't have any more rules. And so, and a classmate of mine said, oh, he thought it was the greatest thing in the world. Because what it did for him is it did help him follow a discipline, self-discipline. So that's just a couple examples. And you guys are mostly in the 60s, right?
70s.
75, most of us.
What? No. I don't mean age. That you're in the seminary.
Oh yeah, 60s. Yeah, right.
You got out of that one.
Yeah, right. In the 60s. I was there in the 50s. I graduated in 61. So I was there in the 50s. And the seminary changed a lot after I left. I don't want to get into that. I really do enjoy your conversation, though, because seminary was so different. What you're talking about doesn't even seem like the same place I went.
Well, it wasn't.
Good point. Good point. So where do we go from here?
I'd like to throw something else out.
Sure.
So I'm a member of St. Thomas More Student Parish in at WMU in Kalamazoo, which probably is the most liberal parish in the Kalamazoo diocese. Maybe it's one of the most liberal parishes in Southwest Michigan, or was until we had some change in pastoral leadership, 5 or 6 years ago. But I attended Synod session back in I guess it was the middle of January. Doesn't seem like, well, anyway, sometime in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And I was very apprehensive about what was going to happen, just because I think I am way left-wing liberal and way left-wing, or maybe science-oriented, challenging theology that is based on Adam and Eve and a world with a vault over it and a vault under it, which has nothing to do with what we know reality is.
Right.
So anyway, it turned out that this session was, although it was handled as a diocesan meeting, the participants were all from about 3 parishes. The largest group from St. Thomas. And the questions were molded a little bit towards the sensitivities and the ministries that are active in St. Thomas versus KFC with respect to Stash, who is, anyway, to much more traditional orientations.
Right.
And the and the so the meetings consisted of, we met in groups of 3 or 4 individuals as a group, discussed a question. Actually, we didn't discuss, we took turns giving our reflection on,
Right.
various questions.
Right.
And then someone summarized that, and that was reported back to everybody.
Right.
And then there was another group of questions, I think. But the dynamics really worked so that the ecclesiastical structure of the documents that the dioceses are giving us, that they really didn't dictate anything about what the outcome was, that the outcome came from the Spirit working through the church, if you want to use that terminology, and I just will throw out, my concept of church is that we all are church.
Right.
Whether we are Christian, Muslim, Sikh, all of the Far Eastern, the native structures, that that whatever God is involved with all of us, and it's not something that happened way back when. It is all happening now. When we go to church and we say Jesus is there, well, he's there because we're there. And if there aren't a bunch of us there, she isn't there. So kind of enough said.
Okay, thank you. You're Paul, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I recognize your voice. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because the answer to the question or the question that I would have that maybe you could answer for the Vatican: did the seminary help you come to your current state of spiritual growth? How did it help you? Or was it an hindrance? And that's a tough question, because I have to answer that question for me too, because I'm very much in tune with what you're saying. I belong to an interfaith group and we pray together, and I think that's wonderful. But I had to overcome certain obstacles to get there. The church was not helpful as far as I'm concerned. Now, when I say church, in that case, I mean the institution. Maybe that's what I should say. The institution was not helpful, because I learned growing up that if the Catholic Church is the one true church, and it never has deviated from the truth, and it's always taught the same thing for 2,000 years, and you're going to hell if you reject any of this. That's an awful burden that I had to overcome. And I fault the church, the institution, for that. So my question, going back to what somebody asked me what question I would ask, I'm having a listening session with my small faith group on Thursday. And the question I posed for them is, how has the church helped you, or how have you experienced church journeying together as equals in a good way, and how in a bad way? Kind of what I said earlier. And if there's a bad way, what do you suggest as a solution? I can give you other examples from my life if you, no, let's not. I've talked enough. Somebody else.
Well, I'd like to say this. When I entered the seminary, I was really, you're in a state of flux, but you're 12 or 13 and you figure you should give it a try. And by and large, I mean, I grew up a little bit, like Paul did. I grew up in a real small community and I was a little bit isolated in that. But the thing that surprised me most when I joined is I was going there to study for the priesthood. And there was really nothing spoken at all about the priesthood
Right.
during my time there.
Right.
And to be quite blank with you, after going through for that for so many years and everything, when I left so many years later and everything, basically what I found is that I got quite a bit isolated from society, and that was never my intent. I don't think you can really grow spiritually if you're on your own, even if you have good people living with you and attempting to lead you. And the seminary, if you will, was to me, in a certain way, really didn't serve any purpose at all. And that's a harsh thing to say, because I have such high regard for the people I went to school with there, and basically for the faculty that was there. But I just kind of found myself in a set of stasis, okay? And we never really talked about it till I went over to Baltimore. And it was only then really that my mind started opening up, and I had a spiritual confessor. First year, Father Law. And after the first year, he said, Frank, when we get back, we need to talk about loyalties, okay? Perhaps a loyalty that you felt you needed to have but didn't need to. And the next year, I had a Father Kavanaugh, a relatively recently ordained priest. He was only a priest for a few years. And we started talking about things very directly. And I just felt I had to leave and that type of thing. But, I was happy with my church before I went to the seminary, or I wouldn't have joined it. But I'm a little bit like Paul, I think, when we talked last time. He had a situation. They said that, that he would leave for the year or whatever he did. And I basically kind of did the same thing. We had a big 2-day, Richard Galant might remember, a big 2-day psychological testing thing and everything. And I just opened up on it, and it told me everything that I had already known myself. Okay. And all I needed to know is I had to go. My education in the seminary was perfect. I learned discipline. I learned all the right things, but there was a certain vacuum there. And I think that with the priesthood development today, if young men go to the seminary, and it's probably good to do so after high school. I don't think the high school adds anything to anything in the process here. The church has to be ready to teach people, or at least put the environment in which the young man who goes into that recognizes that he's in an environment that is that kind of educates you, you get a feel for, and leads you to the priesthood. And it has to be done in a way that reflects modern life, reflects what a what a good idea of what the priesthood is and the kind of person you need to be and what you're willing to do or not do but still keep your individuality. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. That reminds me of a couple of things I just want to share. The leaving what was wrong being in a high school seminary, I think, is I lost my teenage years. George Folk writes about that in his first book, his autobiography, when he was totally embarrassed dating someone after leaving the seminary. He didn't know what to do, what he was supposed to do. The other thing, seminary, most guys today don't, I'll say that positively. Most guys go to the seminary today, I think, after a bachelor's degree. I don't think most of them go to a college seminary. It's only for theology. For the most part, there's still some traditional seminaries. I read a couple of years ago, there's still 3 high school seminaries in the United States. I found the website on one of them, and I'd swear it was St. Joe's back in the 50s. Their language in there and what their goals and so on. So yeah, I wouldn't want us to focus only on seminary and the effect of seminary on us to send to the Vatican, but I think we can, that's a springboard from maybe where to go with your spiritual life, our spiritual life. One of the conclusions I've come to is I don't think the institution was very good at helping me develop my spiritual life. I pretty much did that on my own. Now that may sound crazy and I may be wrong actually, but that's kind of the way I feel right now. And someone else mentioned leaving the seminary, not going back to seminary. I went to 1 year at Mount St. Mary's in Cincinnati and then did not go back. And when I came home that summer, after a while, my mom said to me, "You act like a big load is lifted from your shoulders." I knew right then that I made the right decision. I was there for the wrong reason. And yeah, Pete, do you want to have a comment?
Yeah, I really wasn't trying to evaluate your proposal or how it would operate if we did our own little Synod session. I just wanted to share with everybody what's happening in our parish. In fact, in 2 nights, this Wednesday is our listening session. And the questions that were submitted, first of all, the invitation to come to it was we invite you to share your experiences with the Catholic Church, both the positive and areas where improvement is needed. So I viewed it as finding an opportunity to give some feedback to the bishop and the Pope or whoever, how we viewed the church and how the church was operating and what we thought its strengths were or weaknesses were. Because we really don't have that opportunity much, maybe at all, to do that. But then I got the more specific questions. I was actually asked to be what do they call them, a moderator or somebody to kind of lead one of these sessions, a facilitator.
Yeah.
I came down with COVID last week and I'm still quarantining, but so I'm not going to be able to participate. But the questions were just very, in my mind, really weren't geared to what was our real impression of the church and give feedback on what we thought, how it could improve and things like that. But it was just very, very general stuff. Things like, how is the Holy Spirit inviting your community to grow in journeying together? So we're supposed to share I was in a men's group and we met meetings every week a couple of years ago, and guys would just simply express their own opinions on things. So I would just picture people saying, trying to tell us what they thought the Holy Spirit wanted us to do or something in the parish. And those kind of questions, where in your experiences do you hear the voice of the Holy Spirit? They're just general questions that the answers would be very subjective, and I didn't think would be very helpful feedback, using our one opportunity to give feedback about our views about the church and its strengths or weaknesses. So I kind of view the whole thing as far as the way it's set up in our parish. And I think these questions and the whole procedure was borrowed. The pamphlet we got, it's from the Diocese of the Archdiocese of Washington. So I think they just took it from Washington and printed it for here for our Grand Rapids Diocese. You know, that it wouldn't be really helpful. It really, you get a lot of subjective generalizations about what we think the Holy Spirit wants us to do and stuff, but just way too general. And I thought it would be more helpful to be specific and zero in on some real issues that we feel the church is failing in addressing, or ways it could improve. So that was my only purpose.
Thank you, Pete. I totally agree with you. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I really welcomed your comments because, you know, we're both thinking about the same thing and we're looking at it differently. How can we do this together? And this group is, I mean, this is a group already in existence, and to be able to send our report directly to the Vatican, I think is a great thing we could do. So I welcome and encourage you to come up with some questions with everybody else here that we can address and focus on. What would be a better question?
Well, just specific questions. Our attitudes, well, for example, about the gay community. Do we agree with the church's position on basically, you know, ostracizing gay people from the church, not letting, you know, not recognize them as legitimate people with legitimate positions on that, and just give the Pope or give our bishop some feedback on what we parishioners really feel about that, or how we feel the church is, you know, right now it's getting so tied up politically with the right-wing Republican Party, you know, what those kind of things, you know, give some feedback on those issues and social issues. That's, you know, that, are we satisfied that the church is involved enough in social issues? Should it be involved more? What's our attitude towards racism and all that sort of thing? And these kind of questions, more so than, well, even the liturgy, you know, are we happy with the way the liturgy went backwards a few years ago, just in these stupid translations back to the old, trying to conform to the Latin? You know, give some feedback. I don't know that the bishop or the Pope gets feedback on those kind of things. And anyway, more specific questions like that.
Thank you.
I'd like to say questions that are related to how we're underutilizing women in the Catholic Church. We're more than underutilizing them, we're disparaging them and denying them an equal role, a major role. The little parish that I attended in northern Wisconsin, there's one priest for 5 churches now. And the Bishop of Superior, Wisconsin had a system in place where each parish had a woman leader, I guess you would call it. She wasn't a deacon, of course. She was in charge of liturgy, visiting the sick, organizing the parish in many ways, collecting the money. And then the priest would swoop in on Sunday and say a mass and then go back to the main church in another city. But it got to a point where the women, at least the woman in the church that I attended, was really dynamic. She gave the best sermons I've heard in the last 10 years. I think people were coming to her. We had this one service with a priest and one service without a priest. People were coming to her services because she was more relevant and just a positive person. So there was a tiny bit of jealousy. This is a speculation on my part. He basically, the Bishop of Superior, changed the whole dynamic and decided that it would no longer be a service without a priest. So he diminished the whole role of the women in these parishes. This is an example, I know.
He can't do that. We can get together and have a service anytime we want to.
I guess we could have. But she had a paid job. I know, a directory, she had a car, she had a salary, and it was all taken away from her.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
that's-
the thing that gets me, and that's been a big thing for me, why women are not participating in the church. And the church is really not too interested in that either. Just think, if we had had women in responsible positions since the get-go, and in higher up areas as well as not, just think, this whole child molestation thing that went on for years and years, that our male leaders, frankly, they didn't know how to handle it,
right.
and they handled it poorly. They did not trust Catholic laity to believe, that they could understand faults in the church. I came from a rural area, and if you bought a bushel of apples, you almost understood that there could be a couple of those apples in the bushel that aren't too good, and you have to deal with that. You're not going to eat it because you're going to get sick. Okay. The other thing is how the youth in this country was raised in the church and everything, without guidance from the women who raised the children and that women. It's just that this stuff was just not there. And it was there at the beginning of the church, but it's not there now.
Right.
And to me, that's one of the major things in the church that needs to happen. There's a human understanding of who God's people are, and the people who are entrusted with raising children and everything and taking care of them have just been basically passed by. Okay.
Frank, I think that's exactly a very good example of what kind of feedback. If the bishop gets feedback from several parishes saying they want to see a greater role for women in the parish or in the church, I would hope that would have an effect. And that's the kind of feedback I think the church needs. It's kind of funny, there's a big article last week about the Pope establishing the role of acolytes for women.
Right.
Come on, I mean, allowing them to be altar girls or altar servers. Come on, give me a break. That was big news. This was a big change, This is progress for the church. Come on, this is just so late. I mean, it's just, but anyway, that kind of feedback, you're exactly right about the role of the women in our parish or in the church.
So what's the question we need to raise so that all of us can focus on that?
Could I just comment when I read Pete's questions? The first thing that hit me is Pete's a really good prosecutor there, getting out. But the key lesson that I think that he was sharing, and based on his life experience, is that asking questions that educe a lot of fertile thought or about fact, instead of giving. I just feel like in the sermons and with things we talked about, I'm getting a lesson in catechism every 5 minutes, in the weekly sermons by the priests, and not really getting into the reality of what we're experiencing. And we've shared different ideas. I mean, about reactions to this. And I commend Pete really to the way he's saying, like, look, you got to ask the right questions to get the right answers. And too many of them are just kind of setups to get, yes or no. And let me give an example of that. And it's kind of myself serving a little bit, but I feel fortunate. I was on a group that was called the Baldridge Experience, which is a national a contest, if you will, put out by the Department of Commerce. It's for the United States. And and I went to seminars and we would evaluate companies. This is a kind of a contest. And I was fortunate to have some people telling me, and when I was asking questions, that I was too much. And I think it was a lot of our training that we just want yes or no. And I think this is what Pete's trying to get at. instead of trying to ask questions that people can give responses that reacts to what's inside them, and not something that is going to score points for a trophy or something like that. And I think that's what Pete was getting at, and that, at least that's what I got out of it. And one of the things, I just make a comment, it was interesting. I was thinking when I left the seminary in Baltimore, I had been 7 years where I had a teacher who was a male teacher for 7 years. And I came to the University of Michigan, and I eventually had a woman teacher. And I was thinking, the reason I say that is that to having someone give a perspective from a feminine point of view was kind of foreign to me. And how did that enlighten me and maybe expose the world? And we had such a great push for, understanding groups side of ourself is pushed in the educational structure. And we're kind of closing that. And I think that the Pope, and getting back to what Pete's trying to say, is like, we've got to listen to people. What are they saying? And it doesn't have to be, the group of people that goes to a certain service every week, because they're going to tell you the same thing kind of, without sharing what are others saying. And just advocate. This sounds kind of trite maybe, but I think it spurns the imagination and find out what's going on. I'm sorry.
That's very good. And you know what, I was just thinking, as we're sharing here, we're doing what they're asking us to do. This is a listening session. We're listening to each other. How did we get what we said to the Vatican? It means writing these things down and putting them in a report. And this conversation right now is being recorded, right?
Yes.
So I think it would be appropriate if someone went to that and wrote down the main points that were said tonight as a beginning point in our listening session. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
Can
I mean,
you summarize that, Pete?
just some. But I can say that some of the issues that have already been brought up are things that I thought about that should be,
Right.
presented into a forum.
Right.
They've been hit on in a little bit different ways, but they're very articulate and very, I'll use the word visual. They're coming from the heart. And I think that's what the Pope would want.
I'm going to defend the documents a little bit, because by making it general questions, people can go in any direction they want. And we're proof of that. We did that tonight. Now, if the questions are too specific and too direct, I think that would limit it. Now, you can argue the other way too, okay? But that's just a point of view. That's why we had wide-ranging views expressed tonight. Well, maybe not so wide-ranging. No one said they like the church the way it is. But maybe somebody in this group is and just haven't shared that. But anyway, what's the question? Now, I'm going to repeat what I just said, because I would like someone to listen to this recording and summarize what's been said as a starting point for our report to the Vatican. Anybody willing to do that?
I'll give it a whirl.
Good.
Okay.
And who is that?
Frank Unger.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Frank. That's great. I was going to say, 4 or 5 years ago, I would be game for that. I have problems pulling multiple thoughts together and blending them, because I forget what my track was You know, I know it was there, but to go back and grab it. There's one area we haven't talked about that I just want to throw out without any elaboration. It is, what do we as a church, what are we doing? And there are people in the church who are doing it, about the way our planet is burning up.
Oh, yeah.
And what, because of the way we're feeding the fires.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, I'd actually go further than that. I'm a kind of I've been reading about this since the 80s, you know, and part of it is a very ethical question. You know, we in the West have everything that we want and everything, and the rest of the world's going on, and we've used the energy and everything else and heating it up. But, you know, how can we do this at the cost of everyone else? I'm talking immediately these island nations with their cultures and that. You know, if the sea goes up just 5 feet, they're wiped out. And what do we think of ourselves if in the enjoyment of our lives that these other people's lives and their civilizations and everything drift away, you know? And the good Lord has basically given us the ability to govern the planet, if you will. And, you know, what happens when we meet our Creator, our Judgment Day, and whether willfully or not, those who are willful, I guess, would be greater, but what excuse do we have that we did not care enough about other people and other civilizations and everything else like that, that we wouldn't push to react to the situation that's going on, like Paul said, you know. And that's also part, if you will, because I don't know if the church has that expertise on the top or not, but it certainly as educated Catholics, this pertains also to the role of the laity in the church itself, not just women, but everybody. And the church just does not utilize the talents that are available there.
The bishops, the American bishops voted down the Pope on that issue. And if you read the Psalms, the very issue you're talking about, it's framed as the creation and the praise of creation. And you read all the different Psalms, and it's always praising that very issue. And it's stunning to me that the Catholic bishops have denied the Pope. The Pope has raised the issue a couple of years ago, and they voted him out. I don't know what these people are thinking, but it's I agree with Paul, and I appreciate the comments.
One thing that was expressed in the documents, and our bishop said it in his announcement of the listening sessions in our diocese, that this is not about changing doctrine. I totally agree and disagree with that. The purpose of the listening session is not to change doctrine, but it is to listen to people that have been affected badly by doctrines that the church teaches or the way the church acts. I mean, the institution, I want to use that word, the way the institution acts. I mean, like you just said, they voted against what I'm not sure what you said.
Well, basically, they voted against the Pope's encouragement to go in favor of climate.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yes, I totally agree. Yeah, exactly. And so we need, and one of the comments I heard, see what you guys think of this. One of the comments I heard at a listening session, and also I read about, one of the things we have to do is restudy what it means to be ordained. What is the theology of priesthood? Right now, the theology is they're different than us. I think you probably learned that somewhere along the line. a priest is ontologically different than lay people, according to Catholic teaching. That has to be gotten rid of. They're no different. I was very fortunate to have Bishop Ken Uttner for 25 years, however it was. And I remember him being at a mass with one of the priests who was celebrating, and the bishop said to him, you know, ordination didn't help you learn how to sing at all. You still can't sing. So it didn't make him any different. He's still the same guy he was before. So anyway, so whoever, Frank, summarizing this now, try to capture what was said and not try to capture an agreement or something like that. Just capture the points that were made.
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
And not only that, but of course, you know, you guys will all get copies of this.
Right.
And because sometimes one person interprets what another person said,
Right.
you can miss it, or even if you heard something and wrote it down, the person will think back and say, well, that's you know, that's what I said, but that's not really what I meant, kind of thing, you know.
Right.
So they can edit that. I'm very much aware how that can happen.
Right, good, thank you.
Mhm.
I have a question for Norb. Norb, this is Frank Marfia. How many would you like to see at each of these sessions? Or do you have a number of
Well,
attendees in mind, or 4, 6, 10?
I figured no more than 12, because the way I would envision it working is not quite the way it worked here tonight. But each person would have time to share answers to the question and then go to the next person. There'd be no discussion
Okay,
like we're doing tonight.
okay.
Until after everyone had shared, then we could have some discussion.
See, I don't think you're going to get a lot for the 2 sessions. I'm guessing now. You might only get 6 per session. Is that still
Right.
okay?
Sure. But if everybody can meet at the same one, then I guess I would vote for having one.
Yeah, that would be a thought too. One
Yeah.
session.
Right, right.
Yeah, at this point, the few responses that we've had seem to pick one date. I can't remember exactly which of the 2 dates it was, but we might not need to have that second date.
Right.
We could just narrow it down and say, based on our responses so far, it looks like the one date. I think it was the 14th. Couldn't swear to that.
Okay.
But
That
I
would be
guess
that would be the 7 p.m. the evening one.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just have to double check to make sure that that's the date that, one person I remember said they could go to either one. And the others, I think there were another 4 or something like that, so that they could pick one of those days. I'll put together a little note or one more posting about those dates, and I'll include in it a reference to our discussion tonight, just in general, where it started, and if people want to go and listen to view that tonight's discussion, that's where they can find it. And now, Frank Unger, if you have anything ready sometime before I send out that next announcement, I'd be more than happy to share that as well. I'd like to get, unless anybody has any more comments about
Is Norm going to order free pizza for us all?
Yeah, we can.
For the sale of your books, you know.
You can figure out how to eat it. But I'm eating it.
Food for thought. Food for thought.
Right.
Yeah.
I have some. I know we were.
Pete wants. Bill. Pete's got some.
Oh
yeah. I got a technical question. We can chat to each other, and Bill Gebhardt has chatted to us, and I can't figure out how to respond. How to send my reply. You see the chat at the bottom of the screen?
Yes.
If you click that and go to the right, you'll see what Bill has sent us. And I want to respond to it, but I don't know how to send, where I push send.
If you look down at the bottom, you type message here.
Yes.
And when you
Then hit
finish your
enter.
message, hit return.
Okay, I typed a message and it's just sitting there. It's not, I don't think it's
Did you
getting.
press
going anywhere.
press return
I don't,
Enter
where do I see enter or return?
or enter
on your
On your
keyboard.
keyboard.
on your
Oh,
keyboard?
my keyboard.
There you are.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Thank you. Carry on.
Good question.
Now, if any of you want to send me one and chat, don't do it because I won't get it. I won't be able to see it. Just as a reminder.
You don't have a screen reader
I do, but it doesn't work in connection
in
with
Zoom? Okay.
Zoom. At least I don't, well, maybe it does. That would be interesting. I'll have to try that sometime.
Google it. Google it. See what you come up with.
Google is your friend.
My wife says, just ask Uncle Google.
Hey, Google. Listen, I wanted to get at least a couple things in before, while we still have time and
container.
an audience. Thanks to Mike Donnelly for uncovering the publication called Sententiae. I had not seen that before. And as I read over what was it, 5 pages, 4 or 5 pages, the thing that struck me was what we were expressing as our opinions back in 65 or 66 is very much like what we're doing here. And are some of the very questions that should be discussed in the Synod discussions. I have some production questions related to Sententiae. When Mike sent me a hard copy of what he had sent me in PDF form before, I realized that there's different typefaces that were used. And so I'm wondering if anybody remembers the publication, and if so, when was it published and who produced it? And there was several comments in there from the moderator. I can't remember seeing this when I was at St. Joe, so I have no idea who prepared it, how it was distributed, to whom it was distributed. But I thought the messages in there were really very, very good, including questions about education in the seminary, things like that. I don't know if everybody had a chance to read it. First of all, Mike sent me a better copy that I'm going to make into a PDF. I hope it'll be clearer than the one that I shared with everybody. So if anybody has any input into what was going on and who was doing it, how often this came out, I'd love to hear about it. It's a piece of history that is important, I think, based on kind of or opinions that were expressed in there. So anybody got any input?
Well, I was involved, I think, in the first edition here. It was myself and Joe Radelet and someone else.
Jim Hannock was listed.
Yeah, he might have been there. He might have been there. I'm
I
thinking
think
somebody
Joe Radlett
else.
might have been one.
Yeah. And anyway, we each did a piece, and what we were trying to do, it was just like kind of a seminary literacy magazine or something like that, you know, to circulate and see the comments. Well, that came to a screeching halt because Monsignor Morin saw it, and he called us all into his office, and he said, "Shut it down."
So
and I was surprised to learn that it was resuscitated somehow, but that was after my time, I think.
Well, this
went to
I thought he
Williamston,
was going to kick us right out.
Mike, did you go to Williamston? You got that idea and then went to Williamston and wrote your
No,
community letter
it's
based on that
it
idea?
was all when we were at St. Joe.
So for production,
Yeah,
did
we
one
were
person type
rebels,
it
I
all up?
guess. I don't know.
Did one person type it all up?
At
and
least
then
that's what Monsignor
handing
Moore
out?
thought. I don't know.
I think mailing them
Yeah,
to the,
we were just trying to get this opinion and literary publication there. We thought it would be good for our English classes and our writing classes that we all had, and that really. But I guess Monsignor Merritt got scared of what it might morph into, I guess, and shut it right down.
Who is the moderator?
That's why you don't have that second
Edition.
edition. I don't think that ever happened, at least not in my time.
Who was the moderator, Mike? Mike, who was the moderator?
Well, Joe Radlett was, I would say Joe Radlett, yeah.
Okay, so it was a self-moderation.
How physically was it? It looks like it was a mimeographed thing.
Yes, it was mimeographed.
Well, who did that? Was it what's his name? Mitch in the office?
I really can't remember. We got it copied somehow. I'm not sure how.
Did it get distributed to every seminarian, you think?
No,
Well,
I never saw it.
I'm not really sure how we distributed it. Maybe we put it
Monsignor Morat
under doors, or no, we didn't give it to the faculty. Maybe that's why it was so
Controversial.
disturbed about it, because
January 6th inquiry now.
that might have been part of why he was so
Upset.
hard about it, you know.
Where did Mike Donnelly get it?
I just had stuff, a pack rat. I don't remember how the production took place. I suspect we just gave it to the people at St. Henry's Hall. And I don't remember if we pushed it under the doors or did something else.
Well, Pete, you were an author of a couple of these articles.
Do you notice my name is different on both of them?
Yeah.
Does it say Donald or?
Yeah, one's Donald, one's Pete. I don't remember. I don't have any memory at all about it, but it looks like one was written. I do remember going to Sacred Heart in Detroit on a field trip with a few of you, and I wrote my little piece after that trip.
So would that have been in the spring of '66 that you went down to Sacred? I remember going to Sacred Heart.
I don't know
can't
if it was
remember.
it may have been the fall of '65, but I frankly don't remember.
Well, was it, like I said, I hope you've all had a chance to read it, and if not, a better copy will be, more legible copy will be coming. But I thought the opinions expressed therein are very relevant to everything we've been saying in the last couple of sessions here. And speaking of sessions, the first Monday in April would be 2 months from today. And that would be April 4th. So if we hold to our every other month schedule, that would be the next one. And this time I actually looked at a calendar ahead of time. The following week is Holy Week. So, and then of course, comes Easter. So I think if my suggestion is that we hold to our April 4th meeting, if that's agreeable to everybody. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, sounds okay.
Sounds
That's
good.
fine with me.
I have
Okay.
a couple more questions.
Oh, okay.
Bill, do you have do you retain a list of those who attended tonight?
Yes, I do. Actually, I have sort of a checklist, and I
Good.
go through it and I indicate who was there. I try to indicate what classes they came from, and the only ones I didn't have Thierry Lach and Dick Gietzen, what's your class or seminary attendance years in there?
I'm the same as Jim Blanchard, 67 to 71.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
actually, I was in the seminary 12 years. I went to St. John's even.
Ah,
Well, all right. And the reason I asked the question is, I think Frank's report should go only to the ones that attended tonight.
Okay.
Sure.
oh, okay, all right.
Right, 'cause
And,
we're the one, you know, we're the ones who heard what was said. And so we can give feedback. to Frank.
That chat feature does list everybody who's attending, except Stash is listed as Janice, so that might be a little confusing.
The other question I have is, I think I sent it to you, Bill, in an email, but Samaritas, a couple years ago, when they first bought the place, they said they would put a plaque up if we donated $5,000. I'd like to revisit that. We haven't tried to collect any more money since way back then. I'd like to get that to 5,000 and get a plaque up there with, I don't know, donors, or I don't know what would go on the plaque.
Yeah, I will have to, their director of development has changed in the last year or so, right after, and I can go back and see if I can get information from whoever is in charge of that these days, and see whether any plaque was ever put up. I think Tom Dalton, is he still with us? He's left our meeting tonight. He's the only one that's been over there inside quite a while, so I don't know whether any plaque was set up. And the last I corresponded with Samaritas, they had come up with the wording for a plaque that just said, in appreciation to the alumni of St. Joseph Seminary for their support of this effort, or something like that.
Okay.
But I can track down and see one more time. One other thing that I wanted to point out to people, and this comes up every so often, people will respond to the update newsletter by replying to St. Joe Memories. And that message goes to me. And last time, I think I set it up so that Norb would receive comments as well, especially since the last message had to do with making a choice about which meetings, Synod sessions you wanted to go to. Norb, have you been getting the last maybe 3 or 4 comments from people who expressed an interest in attending?
I only recall about 2 or 3 people, but you sounded like you have more than that.
Well, I think I had like 4, maybe 5. I think
maybe I did. I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay. The other thing that keep related to that is I've been trying to figure out a way for people who get that update to respond to the group as a whole, rather than to essentially me and any of in this last case to Norb. And then it's kind of up, what I've been doing is saying, well, I couldn't, your message came to me and I don't have any way of really forwarding it on to everybody else except by issuing another update. So I've been trying to figure out how to get around that. One of the things that I'm looking into is trying to set it up as a blog, which would allow people to respond to that particular message, but I haven't figured out exactly how to do that.
What do you use for email, Bill?
Well, the email for the update is handled by MailChimp itself. It doesn't go through, it goes through their mail server. In the past, I've just, I would send out stuff to through my Comcast service. So anyway, so that's something I'm looking into. Like I said, I don't know if anybody else has any. I think Norb is the one that put me on to MailChimp.
Yeah, I use MailChimp, but I struggle with it. I have no advice. But my understanding is that I don't think you can get a reply to all.
Right. That's and I've also been looking at our website, which is handled by WordPress, and I'm trying to see if there's a way to set up some of those pages or to set up a blog section there.
That would be nice.
Yeah, part of the issue with both MailChimp and WordPress is MailChimp I use the free service. I don't pay like extra $10 a month or something like that to get the next step up. And the same thing with WordPress. I pay a really low annual fee to have WordPress host our website, and that puts limits on kind of features that I can include in that. So that's where things stand as of today, and I'm always looking for some help wherever or improvements that anybody can offer at all. I enjoy doing a lot of this stuff, but sometimes when people start asking individual questions, it gets a little difficult for me to really devote effort that goes into responding to people. But anyway, that's where things kind of stand today. I thought tonight's session was really quite good. It was really interesting to hear comments on both of our main topics, the updates and the preceding that. So anybody else have anything else to say before we
Yes,
sign
I have
off?
one thing for Norb.
Yes.
Milan, the cathedral is Milan, St. Ambrose.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Oh, really?
Okay.
In Italy? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
right.
it was, what did he get there? 378. He was a teacher of St. Augustine. So anyways.
Okay.
Bill?
Yes.
Yeah, you had asked about my years of attendance at St.
Right.
Joe's, 70 through 74.
70 through 74. Was that high school or did that include?
That was high school. That was after the college had moved over to Christopher House.
Ah, okay.
You guys are all young.
Yeah, you're no kidding.
I'm the oldest one here, right?
Right.
Okay.
It's getting kind of interesting as we listen to and hear comments from people. Realize that some of the people that, well, the Bishop Rose is going to be 92, which means I think he may be one of the last faculty members that Father now Monsignor Ancona is still with us, and he gets those. He must. I'm just guessing in here. He probably is close to 80. Is anybody?
It's probably above 80.
More, baby.
You know.
Yeah, he could be older than that.
Yeah.
92, 84.
I think he
Yeah,
is. I think he was
we're all
definitely in his 80s.
I think he's older
Yeah.
than I am, and I'm 80. So,
It's
Hey,
interesting.
Norb, just
yes.
touch base here. Your old classmate, Bob Tisch,
Yes.
was my first prefect,
Oh,
and he was my dentist for decades.
yeah. Okay.
And he was the third generation in my dental practice that which is now into its fourth generation.
Wow. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, Bob was the one actually I was referring to that.
Okay, it looks like we lost you there, your audio on you, Norb, but
thought the seminary was great and disciplined and taught himself. Am I back? Huh.
Yes, you're
You're
back.
back.
Oh, yeah, I said, Bob Tisch was the one who said that the seminary was good for him, teaching him discipline. So.
One of the things I remember about Bob, he said, well, when he went to Cincinnati, didn't he? I think.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
And he said, these guys at Cincinnati, they were just pulling their hair out, studying, shoot,
studying
in
Latin.
the afternoon, you had to go out and play a game of softball or something to get your mind off your studies. Keep your sanity.
I always thought, looking back at the history, athletics was always a major activity there at the seminary, way back in the early teens of the 1900s. It's kind of a lot of the photos are of guys playing football.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Why would they want to show them praying all the time?
Football. You guys didn't have this, but we had required sports. We had baseball in the spring. That's right. Football in the fall and basketball in the winter. We were assigned to teams.
Right.
I think we did too, Norb. This is Frank. We had, in fact, in basketball one year, we had an A league and a B league.
Wow.
So the players for the A league were selected first. And then the leftovers, those of us who didn't make the A league, got in the B league.
All the little guys.
Yeah. Well, actually, I had Jim Hannock on my team. I was captain of a B league team. Jim Hannock was just not as tall as he was klutzy.
Okay.
Before we bring this to a conclusion, I sent Jerry Stein a cartoon that I spotted on Facebook the other day. And it shows this classroom where the teacher's up in front. And the title of it is Sarcasm. And the teacher says to the students, "I'm so honored and grateful to have this opportunity to teach you stunning people about blah, blah, blah." And that reminded me of Jerry. I asked Jerry because he pointed out that famous quote from Father Zaskowski about something about you scum, you. Does anybody remember what that was? You worthless pile of, I don't know. I
do remember somebody at least paraphrasing him, and something along the lines is
it was a quote from Shakespeare.
I don't want to embarrass you guys or anything, but I just need to tell you how stupid you are. And that came out of a zeal for wanting us to learn. He gets so
frustrated. Blocks your stones are worse than the. Where did it go? Yeah.
Well, that's it. What I remember is I don't want to humiliate you guys or anything, but I just need to tell you how stupid you are.
And I think Mike Murphy, we didn't realize at the time that he was quoting Shakespeare. We took it personally.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway, I'll look up that quote and I'll send that cartoon along to folks, because I thought, as soon as I saw that, I thought, that's Father Z. So, okay, guys, it's been great.
Thanks.
And we'll chat again on April 4th for the whole group. And I'll get in touch with you, Norb, about the wording for another invitation to the listening sessions. And I guess you can decide whether you want to go ahead with 2 or 1, or how you want to handle it. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Gebhard.
Good
Good
health,
night, everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.
Hey, Gebhard, don't get heat stroke.
Be well, guys.
God bless to all.
Take
Take care.
care.
Good night, all.
Be safe.
Good night.
God be with you.
Zoom text enabled.